Hello everyone, in today's video I'll be showing you how to turn a bullet pen. Let's get into it. So before I show you how to make a bullet pen, I just thought to say that I won't be going into as much detail as I did in the previous video, so if you're interested in seeing that one, I'll leave a card in the top right corner, so go check that out if you're interested. So this is the piece of acrylic we're going to be turning to make our bullet pen, and as you can see, we squared off the ends in the preparing the pen blanks video, so I'll leave a card in the top right corner if you're interested to see how I prepared this blank. So these bullet pens are slightly different to the slimline pens. They require some bushings which actually go inside the brass tube this time, as opposed to just butting up against it. I'll show you now that these are the little bushings which go inside of the brass tube, and this diameter here, it's a diameter that you want to turn down to when you press your pen tip together, and then this allows everything to end up flush and you get a nice fit at the end. So these simply, they just slot in the end of the brass tube, so you just push them in here and they just go like that, and that's just pushed into the end, if you can see. So there you go, you can see that's just being pushed into the end. Try and show you from that angle. So when you turn this down, you're going to come down to this diameter, and that way you'll get a nice fit with the other component of the pen kit. So you just press no one at the other end as well, so that goes in this end like so, and now this is ready to be slotted onto the mandrel and we can turn it down. So I'll show you how to do that now. So this is the mandrel. I'll go into a bit more depth about this in my previous video, so I'll leave a link in the description to it. The difference between a bullet pen and a slimline pen is that you've only actually got one piece of acrylic, and that's it, whereas the other slimline one, you've got two. So say like we just put our bullet pen in between these two bushings here. Obviously they're not the right diameter, but just say for instance, there's nothing to stop it from spinning, because this can still slide around and the brass wheel isn't going to tighten up to lock it in place. Therefore we need to adjust these and undo them to bring the rod closer so that the brass wheel will tighten it up. Now I understand that you can get mandrels which don't have this adjustment, and actually the first one I ever bought didn't have this feature, so if you're looking to buy one to start with, I would recommend getting one like this. However, if you already have one and you don't want to pay for another one and it's not an adjustable one, then a way to get around that when turning bullet pens is either to put two bullet pens on there if you have two to do, or to put like a spacer here of like another brass tube that may have gone wrong and you've turned before, or anything like that that can slot on here and space it out and then allow you to tighten it up. So first off, we're going to undo these to bring this rod in closer. So I've just got two adjustable spanners, and these will just slot over here like so, and you just undo them and you'll get a nice like that, and then you're able to push the rod back in to the right length you need it. So I'm going to remove all of the bushings like so, and keep this one on the end. I'm then going to slot the bullet pen over that with the bushings on that I showed you just a minute ago. So these just slot over like this. Obviously the metal rod can still move, and then you just want to adjust it where the wheel can go up against and it's still a bit frayed. If we had it say like here, then we wouldn't be able to tighten it up and this would still be able to move. So you want to make sure that, oh that's come out there, that it's nice and tight. So I'd probably go about there. I'm then going to slot the last bushing over it like so. I would then grab your brass wheel so you don't drop everything and make it fall on the floor, which I've done, and then you want to tighten it all back up. So grab your spanners again, give it a nice tighten down. You don't want this coming undone. So as you can see, it's still moving, but when we tighten this brass wheel up, it's all nice and tight and it's not going to move anywhere. So that's all sorted, and now we can turn this down. So I'm going to bring the tailstock up against the end with the revolving centre and tighten that up at the back. Loosen that off and tighten it up a tad with the wheel and tighten that back up. So now we are all ready to turn. It's all locked in, really simple when turning a bullet pen, and that's it. As I said, if you didn't have this feature where you can shorten this, then just put another block of these maybe here to space it out, and that way you're able to turn it still. So I've got my tool rest put in place, and I'm just going to slide it up against pen. In the previous video I showed you how to align it with the centre with your chisel, but I'm not going to do this in this one, so as I said, it's in the description if you're interested. So a bullet pen is much easier, I think, in my opinion, to turn, because you've only got one to do, and also it's a bigger diameter, whereas with the slimline pens they're a lot skinnier, so it takes a lot more to turn down. So once you've got this round, you're pretty much near the end of it. So first off, I'm going to rough this out anyway, and I'm just going to put the chisel on and just run around it like this, nicely, around my finger, come from either side like so, and obviously these bits will break out as well, but don't worry about that, that's just going to happen. Just take it nice and easy when you get here, and try and avoid going on like this, because you don't want to catch the wing. So I'm going to turn it down to rough to start with, and then I'll show you what it's like afterwards and what shape I'll do. So I've got this pretty much roughed out now, and as you can see we're almost at these bushings, so by the time you've actually got it nice and round, you're pretty much at the bushings anyway. So the easiest shape to do, and the one I normally do, because you haven't really got much room to go for any type of shape, is that I just slope it down either side, and I still get it nice and thin or as thin as I can, but I just normally just slope it down either side. So the way to do that is I just work from the edge here and push, then I go halfway and again, then I go to the middle and push down, and I do the exact same on this side. And to get the nice smooth cut, you just want to make sure that you've got the bevel on, and that way you'll see these nice shavings come across the top, and you'll see nice small little shavings coming out of your chisel. Make sure you have a nice sharp chisel when you're turning as well. As I said, you can use a diamond file just to quickly put the burr back on. Also, it's quite good practice to get a nice smooth cut with this, because it saves less sanding and gets rid of any scratches, and it just makes life a bit easier, because no one likes sanding, do they? Right, so I'm going to turn this now, and then I'll show you afterwards. So these are the shavings off the chisel, as you can see. They're really nice and fine, and they're quite small as well, but this is like how you can tell that you're getting a really nice smooth cut. So as you can see, we've got a nice smooth cut around it, and by the time we've sanded it, it will be even smoother, and polished it as well. You can also see we've got a nice shape to it. There's a slight arch which just adds, you know, a different design to it. So the next step is to wet sand it. I also meant to mention throughout this that I was turning at about 1000 speed, something like that. It's perfectly fine for pen turning. But now I'm going to wet sand it, and I'll work from 150 grit up to 400 grit. And it's best to have some sort of bucket or some bucket of water just to hold it in, so you can keep re-dipping the sandpaper in. So to sand my pens, I just use these Axminster strips. They're really handy, and they come in 150 to 400 grit. I'll leave a link to a video where I mentioned them, which is my workshop tour, in the top right corner now, if you're interested in seeing what tools I have and everything else. So anyway, I'm just going to sand this all over, and first you've got to remove the rest, and basically just hold your finger under it and just rub it all over. Make sure you're pressing hard enough, because you don't want to be holding it where you've got no pressure. Like holding it like this just doesn't do anything, so you want to make sure you've got some nice pressure underneath it, and you want to make sure that you're sanding at about 600 speed while doing this, because you don't want it to get too hot, otherwise your fingers will start to burn as well. And it's also best to put some sort of cloth down while doing this, so you don't ruin the bed of your lathe. And when it all gets clogged up like this, just re-dip it in some water and it will clear it all off. So this has been sanded up to 150 grit, and I'm going to go up from 150 to 400. You can see you start to get this film build over it, but that's just because I don't really know why, but it just starts to build over. But if you get some water, you can see your progress by just rubbing it all over it. So you can see it's already getting quite a nice shine. So I'm going to go up to the 400 grit, and then I'm going to use the micro mesh pads to polish it. So as you can see, we're getting a really nice shine. This is just from the 400 grit, and now we're going to use the micro mesh pads, which range from 1500 grit to 12,000 grit. This is what they look like, and you just dunk them in water and do the exact same thing we did with the sandpaper, and make sure you press hard enough so you're really polishing it up. So I'll show you this first one, and then the rest is just the same. So turn the speed up to about 800, I reckon, to start with for the first one. And make sure you're pressing hard enough. I always find that you want to make sure you give the first one long enough to, you know, really polish it up. That way it gets rid of all the scratches if you've got any in there as well. So just go into where the bushings are and press nice and hard all over. So it's as simple as that. You just rub it all over and work through all of the grits. So once I've polished it all up, I'll show you the end result. So as you can see, these micro mesh pads are giving a nice shine to the acrylic, and now it is time to push it together. So I've taken the acrylic off the lathe, and as you can see, there isn't as many components with a bullet pen. You have the spring, your acrylic you turned, the pen cartridge, the front of the pen and the back of the pen. So first off, we are going to press the front of the pen together. Before pressing this together, it's worth mentioning that this top actually unthreads, and what you don't want to do is press the pen together against this, otherwise you're going to squash the thread and you're not going to be able to thread this top nib bit back on. So make sure when you press the pen and the acrylic together that you have the top bit threaded on. So just put your top of your pen into the brass tube in the acrylic, line it up on the other side and slowly tighten the vise up. Keep going until it bottoms out. You don't want to do the exact same on the other side. So unwind your vise more. Make sure you line the rifle on the bullet pen on a piece of the acrylic which isn't that interesting, so you've got a really blank area here on the acrylic, so that's where I'm going to line it up. And then you do the exact same thing and you press the other end onto it. Just like that. So the pen is now pressed together top and bottom, and now we need to unthread the top. And you slot the pen cartridge down at the center, and then the spring goes over the top onto there, and then you grab the top of the pen and you press down on it quite hard and start threading and tightening it up, just like that. And now your pen is completed, and the way you work it is that, as you can see, we've got this really cool rifle on the side which is like a bolt action, and you just press down and move across like that, and it just allows you to bring the pen out like that. I'll show you from a bit further distance. And again, if we just squared these brass tubes up too much here, then the pen nib which comes out of it, it would still be protruding, and you don't want that. So make sure you don't square it off too much when doing this. So now I'll show you some close shots of this. So as you can see, the pen is now finished. I've also completed all of the other pens that I had already prepared, so I'll show you some clips of them now. So there you go guys, there are all the pens completed. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.